Allahumma salli ala Muhammad ali Muhammad.
Receives our, I like to sometimes joke with my students and they say he gets a printout. He gets a printout of what we have done in that week. So every believer, every Shia, every Ja'fari, all of their deeds are presented to the Imam. Now when I say, it's a printout, I'm of course hypothesizing, I'm just making a light comment because that doesn't literally mean a printout. It means that the Imam is informed of our deeds. And we're living in a very interesting era that when we want to pass on information, and I was actually just thinking a few of my jobs ago, I was working in one of the Husainiyas in the Greater Toronto area. And at that time it was one of the only few Husainiyas at the time, masjids in the time. And I remember that whenever we had to, for example, send out a bulletin or send out a message, we used to have to go to the photocopying store, make a printout, and then copy it about 200 or 300 copies of that, and mail it out to everybody so that they would receive it, and hopefully there was enough time from the time that the postman delivered it to the time that they have to act on whatever, or gathering, what have you. And today we do everything electronically. So if I have to make an announcement now, I can send it out to you on almost instantaneously. You get the message, you don't have to wait for 2 or 3 days for the mailman to deliver the letter and then to try and act on it. And so what has been happening is that we know immediately what is taking place. So when I used to think and tell the students that the Imam receives all of this information every Jumma, sometimes students used to ask and wonder, and sometimes the adults would not ask openly, but they would say, how does the Imam get, 300 million people's, 300 million if you were to just look at the Shia. I'm not even talking about the 1.2 billion Muslims. If we were just to look at the Ja'fari Muslims, how does he get 300 million printouts or information or documents on Jumma? Like it would take the whole Jumma, forget about Jumma, it would take at least 10 Jummas to just go through all that. And now we're living in an era where people are doing speed reading, the messages are coming instantaneously, and it becomes a lot more understandable now as to how the information gets relayed, and there's much more to come. Especially with this AI information era that we're living in, and artificial intelligence can do almost anything that you want it to do. And of course there's pros and cons, I don't want to get into that, but I just want to come to my main topic for today, is that the Imam receives that information, and the Imam basically analyzes it, does his own review, and we are told that the Imam, when we have done good deeds, when we have done deeds that are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Imam actually prays for us. The Imam does a dua for us, does a supplication for us, that Ya Allah, this person has acted or done what I am pleased with. And when we do things on the other side, then the Imam actually has tears in his eyes and says that this person is claiming to be my Shia, and this is what he has done. This is what she has done. This is what they have done. And so it is in our sort of hands and in our ikhtiyar to do what we can to make our Imam pleased. And if we do the things that make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala displeased, then we're actually bringing tears to our Imam. And I always tell, again, my students one thing, that there's enough enemies in the world who bring tears to the Imam. We don't need to be one of them. We don't need to be those who are bringing tears to the Imam. And so this is, we are told that these are things that would please the Imam, and these are the things that would displease the Imam whenever we disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the day of Jummah is that day where we look at this last week that we have passed, and it's a time that we should actually, and I know that now the day is very short, mashallah. I know some people like to fast in these short days. Some people are complaining that it's not enough time to do everything that I want to do. Whatever it is, we still have the same 24 hours in a day. It's still a time for us to think about what we have done in this week. It is important for us to reflect before the reflection is done for us. There's a very beautiful hadith of the Holy Prophet. He says, do your hisab, do your accounting, before the accounting is done for you. It's a very deep hadith. You see, on the Day of Judgment, we'll be stockpiled with a whole bunch of things that are on our Nama Ya'mal, our book of deeds, and we'll be wondering, say, oh my God, I did this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this. We'll be wondering. And the reason why a lot of people will be wondering is that they never took the time to do an accounting for themselves. The accountability that needs to be done for ourselves. If we do it ourselves, then we know where we stand. We know what we have done. I like to give an example, and this might be not an appropriate or some people might find it irrelevant example. But if you look at, for example, and I'm giving my own example, I sometimes wake up one morning and say, oh my God, I feel heavy today. I feel like I've put on weight. And whenever that happens, genuinely the scale tells me that I am right. I say, oh my God, how can that be? How did that happen and all that? And then I started doing something differently. I said, okay, you know what? Before I drink that can of iced tea, let me see how many calories it has. Let me see the sugar content. Let me see if there's any vitamin or any value to it. And then when I looked at it and I was trying to do a little bit of an analysis in a day, how many of these juices I drank, how many of this did I drink, and I contrast that with how many glasses of water did I drink, I said, Ya Allah, no wonder I've put on weight. And that never occurred to me until I sat down and did that accounting. Okay, I ate, this meat pie, I ate this many potatoes, I ate that and that. Okay, how much calorie, how much fat, how much carbohydrates and all that, how much protein did I take in? And then all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, all this time I was blindsided. I didn't know. It's like, not looking on your side view or rear view mirror to see what's around you, and you just keep eating and then wondering, why did I put on weight? Why am I so unhealthy? Why do I feel lethargic today? You see, all these things add up and contribute towards our situation and our state. And when we do that, when we take a look at those calorie intakes, then we realize, oh, okay, so this is what happened. This is how many calories I had in this day. The same things with our deeds, our amal. When we sit down and we reflect, okay, how many times did I obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How many times did I disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Did I look at something haram? Did I see something haram? Did I say something haram? Did I hear something haram intentionally? All that ends up adding up. And then we see that, okay, now I understand what will happen to me on the Day of Judgment. So now while we do it now for a week, then it's easier to do the istighfar than to wait till our death is near. And of course, death is near means if people were thinking they're getting old and then all that, the last little while, not only during the time of COVID, but we learned how death has no age factor to consider. There was actually I was looking at over the summer I was at a wedding in the Toronto area at the Jafri Masjid, the Husseiniya there. And I was there, and there was one of the brothers had asked for a photo be taken of, there was 4 scholars there. I was just a student there, but there was 4 alims there, and 3 alims and myself. So they took a photo of us. It was Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi, Maulana Rizvi Saab, Marhum Sayyid Asad Jafri, myself and Sheikh Hassanain Qasim Ali, who's also been here on a number of occasions. And I was just looking at that photograph, and imagine out of the 4 of us, the youngest one of us was Sayyid Asad Jafri. The youngest of us 4. I have that photo if anybody wants to see it. It will bring tears to your eyes. And I say, okay, so the one check mark is done. So it didn't, Malakul Maut didn't come and say, okay, I'm going to take the oldest one from here. He took the youngest one. Which one of us is next? Allahu Alam. Could be me, could be anybody else. So age is not a factor. So when I say that, people will think about that, there are some instances in which, the doctors say, okay, you've got only 3 months to live, do whatever you want to do in 3 months, do whatever you need to do in these 3 months. And a lot of times, it happens that sometimes these are accurate assumptions, and sometimes they're not so accurate. I still remember, and sometimes it's almost in a humorous way, but it was actually very serious. I remember a number of years ago, many years ago, somebody had called me from another city. I don't want to name the city or anything. And he calls me and he says, Sheikh, are you in town for the next 2 weeks? And sometimes I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, let alone 2 weeks. But I said, I don't have any scheduled trips, so I'm in town. He said, Bas, my mother is very ill. The doctors have said that, in these next 2 weeks, it's going to be Khudafiz, Ma'as-salama. So she has requested you to do her talqeen and to do her burial rites and to be there for her, mayat and everything. So I just want to make sure that you are in town in these 2 weeks, and I would like you to, I want to book you ahead of time for that. So I said, inshallah, if I am alive myself, because there's no guarantee I will be alive, but if I am alive, bi'idhnillah, with the permission of Allah. This auntie, this lady, survived 2.5 years after this episode. How many? 2.5 years. Imagine if I would have been waiting, I would have also gone. But the point is, sometimes it happens, and sometimes, as in the case of Marhum Sayyid, you're going to madrasa and you might have a heart attack and immediately. No medical issues. I've had a number of extended family members in the same situation, a very similar situation. They went to sleep at night. One 18-year-old, a cousin of my cousin, so very close to home, was talking to his friend on the phone, went to sleep at night. His mother goes to wake him up in the morning. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Till today, this has been years later, the family is still no medical issues, no known illnesses, nothing that would have triggered a sudden death at the age of 18 or 19 years of age. So don't think that we have time, my dear sisters and brothers. Don't think that we have time. We need to be prepared at any time. And so when we are talking about how the Imam's assessment of our actions will be, this is where we start from. This is where we can basically come and get an opportunity, very practically say, okay, where do I stand? And I myself am guilty of this. I say, okay, then inshallah, I'm going to do this tomorrow. I'm going to do this tomorrow. It's as if I am thinking to myself, I have a guarantee that I will be here tomorrow to do A, B, and C, or X, Y, and Z. Imagine for a moment, do I have that guarantee? I don't. So whatever we are able to do, especially when it comes to our good deeds and our assessments and our analysis and our amal of khair, let us try to do it as soon as possible. There was a hadith from the Holy Prophet that I wanted to share before I end the first khutbah, inshallah, whereby the Holy Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, has been quoted as saying, the best qualities of people, there is three things that are known as the best of this. Khairun nas, people's best qualities. The first one he says, to feed the people. Give food to those and to feed the people. Now, it's interesting because the wording of the hadith just says to feed the people. But the commentators of this hadith, and Sheikh Saduq and the translators, of course, who are also ulama or fuqaha or at least knowledgeable, they put into parentheses, into brackets, the needy. Even though the hadith doesn't mention needy, it just means that give ta'am, food to feed the people, just to give to the people. But the commentators have that to feed the needy, so whichever of the two you take, whether it is to feed anybody or whether it is to feed the needy, in both of these cases, the Prophet said this is a good deed. Because a lot of times people say, why should I feed the people here? Why should I sponsor a Thursday night or a Friday night iftar or dinner? People in Canada, they're eating well. Everybody here has got food. Everybody is eating and drinking well. And I'm talking about this on a day that, inshallah, somebody has provided lunch for us, so I don't want you to not take your lunch. But they say, well, we are eating enough. Should we give this to the needy? And I always reply, I say, yes, give to the needy as well. But don't deprive your own people or your own community to have an iftar. Don't deprive each other of that as well. There's going to be thawab for both. Even if you feed somebody who is well-to-do, who is eating more than you and I, even to feed them, you're still going to get thawab. And one of the qualities of good people, the best of people, khairun nas, the Prophet said, is to feed people. So one is to feed the needy people, one is to feed the people who are already well fed, but both of them have got a thawab from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second one, he says, the second quality of the people who are the best of people, that they will greet loudly. They will say salam to each other loudly. And of course, be careful when, for example, whenever there's a salat going on, a salatul jamaat or something, we are told that it is makruh to say salam loudly in a case like that. But whenever people are just sitting and talking, chatting, having their lunch or dinner or whatever, and to say salam is very, very strongly recommended. And to say it slightly loudly so that people can hear you is actually one of the qualities of very good people, according to the hadith of the Holy Prophet of Islam. And so, I don't want to get into I don't have the time to get into the ahkam, the requirements of when you should say salam, when you should not. But one of the things that I want to leave the thought with all of you, inshallah, is that imagine that there are certain opportunities in which a mustahab act gets you more thawab than a wajib act. And this is probably one of the prime examples of that. That it is mustahab. It is not wajib to say salam when you come in. It is mustahab to do that. And to reply that, now here again, because if somebody comes in and there's a majma there, and they just say assalamu alaikum, then even if one of the people replies, it is sufficient. But if nobody replies, it's wajib on all of us. Wajib kifai, the account of that. But if somebody replies, addresses you, that Sayyid Ali, salamun alaikum, then it is wajib. The person who has said salam will get 70 thawab. For him to reply, which is wajib, he'll get 1 thawab. So there are times that Islam encourages us to do mustahab acts and give us more of a bonus, we would call it, than the wajib acts, but the wajib ones have to be done. So with not doing it, you will actually be committing a sin. And the third thing that the Prophet has said that will be a quality of khairun nas is to do salah at night. The allegorical reference is to Salatul Layl usually, or other mustahab salats in the middle of the night. It says, when ayyuhan nas na'ima, when the rest of mankind is sleeping. When they're sleeping and you get up and you've left your sleep, you leave your nice warm bed, because now we're approaching winter time, so your bed is warm, right? In the summertime in Canada, we have to say the opposite. You leave your nice cool bed to go and go do wudu and go pray. That is one of the qualities of the best of min khairun nas. So the thalatha that we're talking about, the 3 things. Number 1 is to feed people. Number 2 is to greet loudly, to say salam. Number 3 is to pray at night when people are sleeping, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. Fasalli li rabbika wanhar. Inna shaniyaka huwa al-abtar.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين خالق السماوات والأرض إلها واحدا أحدا صمدا لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين رحمة للعالمين طه وياسين بالقاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وصل على وسير رسول رب العالمين وأمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين وقاتل الكافرين والمشركين مولانا علي بن أبي طالب.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وصل على بنت رسول رب العالمين سيدة نساء العالمين صديقة الطاهرة أم الأئمة فاطمة الزهراء.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وسلم على سبت النبي الرحمة وسيدي شباب أهل الجنة إمام الحسن والحسين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
والأئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين سيد العابدين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
ومحمد بن علي الباقر للنبيين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وجعفر بن محمد الصادق الباري الأمين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وعلي بن موسى الرضا المرتضى.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
ومحمد بن علي الجواد التقي.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وعلي بن محمد النقي الهادي.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
والحسن بن علي الزكي العسكري.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
والإمام القائم الهادي المهدي المنتظر.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم عجل فرجه وقرب زمانه وكثر انصاره واهلك عداه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آله في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الحكيم: يا أيها الناس اتقوا الله اتقوا ربكم يا أيها الناس اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. Once again, I remind myself and the believers to observe the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just a very quick administrative announcement before we start the second khutbah, which I will inshallah maintain in as short a time as possible. And that is that if anybody has parked in the neighbor's lot, please try to park on the side of the street. You're welcome to park in our grass, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, but please do not park in the neighbor's lot in today, because we had the sisters Dua Nutbah session. We've had more cars than usual. So if anybody has parked in the neighbors, if you don't mind just moving your car, we would appreciate that, inshallah. I think Brother Hussein was trying to ensure that Mu'mineen parked in the right places, bi'idhnillah. I know that the second khutbah is, of course, a review and an analysis of what is happening. And I'm sure that all of you have been reading and are aware of the situation that has been transpiring. And it has been a horrific situation. I don't want to perhaps repeat anything that you might have already read or come across. But I would like to start with a very interesting adage that many elders use. And they say that, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me many times, shame on me. If you've heard that, then you will understand what I'm trying to say. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me many times, shame on me. That means that I was not intelligent enough to figure out that you are fooling me. And the reason why I said that was because the media was reporting very, very vehemently from the Israeli Defense Forces that Al-Shifa Hospital has got a tunnel and a base and arms and a gathering point and a meeting point, and some of the hostages are kept underground there. And basically, you know what has transpired, what has happened. Nothing has been found. And people are shocked. Why are you shocked? Why are you surprised? We were told in the late 1990s, Iraq has weapons of mass destruction and Saddam has this and that. While I was no fan of Saddam, may Allah keep him in a place near the Namruds and the Iblises and the Pharaohs of the time. But there was nothing found. And again, we're going through this cycle. It is called the propaganda war, to basically make the public opinion in such a way, mold our minds into believing things in such a way that we just accept it, and then if it turns out to be fake, oh, okay, our mistakes. No apology. No apology. Because you'll notice one thing. If you remember the other Pharaoh that we had gone through, George Bush Sr., okay? Do you remember his sentence when he had shot down, when his people had shot down the Iranian civilian airplane just over the United Arab Emirates that was going to Bandar Abbas from, I don't know if it was from Dubai or from one of the cities in the UAE. And he says that, I don't care what the facts are, I will never apologize for the United States of America. The Israeli late Prime Minister, another Jahannami, Menachem Begin, when he had bombed Syria in his time, he says the government of Israel has nothing to apologize for, and they've actually maintained that policy since those days. So even if they do something wrong, they will want apologies from everybody else if they do something wrong, but they have made it their policy that we will never apologize. If this is not the fate of the Pharaohs and the Namruds and the Iblises, then I'm not sure what it is. Perhaps you can help me out. The reviews have been very clear, and alhamdulillah, the only thing that I've seen positive come out of this, and I rarely see optimism in what is happening, but major news outlets like the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, which is often a Zionist mouthpiece, as is our own media here in North America, and that is that they are apologizing, they have apologized for their inaccurate news reviews, which has been, alhamdulillah, a very good step. Because a lot of times what happens in the media was, and again, these things create things in the minds of the people, and sometimes it is too late. A few years ago, when Dr. Ahmadinejad was the president of Iran, the National Post, one of the major newspapers of Canada, front page, and I still remember this article, said that Ahmadinejad had put a requirement for Iran's Jewish community that they must wear the Star of David so that they can be identified as Jews, and eventually Dr. Ahmadinejad, as the president of Iran, will eventually do to the Jews what Hitler was accused of doing to the Jews of Germany in his time, locking them up, putting them in ghettos, and whatever else that he was accused of doing. And this was a major article, politicians and all other media and journalists and everybody, oh, this is horrible, this is phenomenally wrong, this is a violation of human rights, this is a violation, this is a war, this is a crime, this is, everybody was on the bandwagon. 3 days later, on page 2 in a very small article, we regret the inaccuracies contained in the story that we had published 48 hours ago. Small article which a few people might have read if you were to go through it. If any of you want details on that, I can show this to you. And damage is already done. The damage is already done. And so what happens, what needs to be done now, my dear sisters and brothers, if you see these types of inaccuracies in the media, I urge you, I request you, I please, and I'm requesting you to take a moment to send an email, make a phone call, and at least talk to the editors, talk to the politicians. Just the other day, I was speaking to our member of parliament, and I was telling her, I said that, she was asking how is the community coping. I said, we're coping horribly. We're all traumatized. Because even though it's not happening to us here, these are our brothers and sisters who are being killed, who are being maimed, who are being tortured, who are being without water and food and electricity and all the necessities. People are being cleared out of hospitals in the emergency room, those who are injured. You go to a hospital to be treated. How many babies have been killed because the incubators did not have gasoline, fuel or electricity? Believe me, and I told her, I said, had any other country done this, had any other country killed babies in a hospital, in the incubators, in the ICU, intensive care unit, the country, the world would have sent their military planes and their bombers, and they would have bombed that place, that country that is the perpetrator of such crimes. They would have bombed it without any. Countries like Somalia and Sudan during Obama's presidency, who were suspected of having a chemicals weapon, which was eventually found to be a pharmaceutical company. They bombed it just on the presumption or assumption that there might be chemical weapons being produced there. They bombed it, Obama's time, and then they said, oh, there was no chemicals and this was a pharmaceutical company. No apology, that is expected. But because it was Somalia, they bombed it. Why not apply the same? Dr. Noam Finkelstein, a Jewish journalist and philosopher, he said something very beautiful. A Jewish person saying this. We are saying this, so nobody's going to listen to us. But this Dr. Finkelstein, you can look him up if you want. He's a man that I respect very greatly, his analysis and his thoughts. He says, you know what, one journalist was asking him, as they ask everybody else, as they tell everybody else, do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn Hamas for what they did on October 7th? Do you condemn? That's how all conversations with any journalist, even when they were interviewing me, the first thing they asked me, do you condemn Hamas? Oh, put the brakes on. His answer was very beautiful. I wish I would have thought of this when my interview was taken. He says, when you talk about Hamas being condemned or dismantled, I will agree with you. But the same basis that you want to dismantle Hamas, you have to use for Israel. And if you want to dismantle Hamas, this is a Jewish professor saying, he said, if you want to dismantle Hamas, then you have to dismantle the Israeli government 10 times over. This is his wording, not mine. 10 times over you have to dismantle the Israeli, because everything you're accusing them of doing, they have done. Why are you looking at October 7th, 2023? Why not look at Operation Cat's Lead? Why not look at the previous operations that they've gone into Gaza with? This has not been the first time that they have gone into Gaza. This is not going to be the last time. Maybe they might destroy it and take it over completely, because they've already, they prepare the public. In case you have been reading or noting between the lines, there's a lot of things that are between the lines. One of the statements from the Mal'oon Prime Minister of the occupied nation of Palestine, you know what he says? He says, we will not let Hamas run Gaza. That's been established. He says, but we will not let the Palestinian Authority, the PA, rule them either. That was his sentence. If you read between the lines, you'll understand what I'm trying to say. So on the one hand, all of these proponents who say we support Israel because it is the only democracy in the Middle East. That is their main line. Why do you support Israel? When people ask them, when they ask the President of the United States or the Prime Minister, oh, it is the only democracy in the United States. Okay, the people of Gaza had elected Hamas in 2006 in a democratic election that there was no force, there was no duress. They elected the people, the government of Hamas. So democracy at play. Oh, but we don't like them. Iran has a democratically elected president. Oh, we don't like them, so we will not call it a democracy. Okay, take it. Then what? I said, well, then we will use our rulings on them. So then now you're supporting a dictatorship in the Gaza, if there's anything left in Gaza. There's no more infrastructure. They've thrown it at least 50 years behind. The hospitals are completely decimated. Everything else is basically destroyed. It will take them a minimum of 50 years to just recover. And countless deaths. So what do you want? Who do you want to run the Gaza after your so-called operation is done? I just want to leave this with you to think about for a moment. And then you can see that, those who don't know, and I'll just leave this as a thought. The thought is that a lot of things that we are seeing happening here locally, this LGBTQ lobby and agenda and emphasis, I would like you to just think about, or if you get a chance to do a bit of research, you'll have to dig very deeply. When you dig deeply, you will find out that the sources who are the perpetrators, encouragers, and those who are in Hollywood and even now slowly into Bollywood, that are putting this agenda right in our faces and corrupting our children, manipulating our children, creating desires in our children that are unnatural desires. Find out who is the source of this. You will be very strangely shocked because it is going to go back to the same people and root that is basically pulling the strings of these parliamentarians and politicians. You sometimes wonder that when you see this many deaths, it doesn't matter whether there's 12,000 deaths or there's 12 deaths, it doesn't matter. Every innocent person is a human being. This is what I was telling the MP just on Wednesday. I said that every one of those people, you're looking at numbers. Sadly, we are now becoming apathetic. We're just looking at numbers. 11,000, 12,000, 11,000, 12,000. These are all numbers to us. Every one of those 12,000 people plus the 29,000 who are injured have a story to tell. There was a very beautiful quotation from, and I don't usually quote movies from the pulpit or the mimbar, but it was something that was, I remembered it from more than 20 years ago, and it is something that the Mahatma Gandhi had said, and it was quoted in the movie called Gandhi. He said, when somebody came to him and said that, this riot had taken place, and we have fought against the British government, and only 2 officers were killed in the whole operation. He said, only 2 policemen were killed in this whole operation. So he was basically saying to the Mahatma that this is great, only 2 people got killed. His response, he says, go ask the families of those 2 people, how do they feel? Just go ask the family members, okay, only 2 people were killed. See what their response is. Here you've got 12,000 plus. These are just the confirmed numbers. In fact, I was talking to this parliamentarian and I said, you realize one thing, 12,000 is the figure that has been calculated. For those of you who know the situation, being the most densely populated area on the face of this earth and the world's largest prison. In fact, one of the journalists corrected me. She said that this is not the world's largest prison. In prison, you're guaranteed safety and security. In prison, you get 3 meals a day and you can get unlimited water in any prison that you go to. Okay? This is not a prison. It's a concentration camp. I will leave that with you, inshallah. I've taken a lot of your time. May Allah bless you and reward you for listening. But I just want to make sure that I encourage you one last thing. Making your phone calls, sending out the emails to the journalists, to the parliamentarians, it has been working. It has been very effective because you've noticed there's been almost a 90-degree change in our own Prime Minister and in many of the parliamentarians here in England and in the United States. We need to make this 90 degrees into 180 degrees. It can only be done with your pressure, inshallah, the pressure of all of us and encouraging others. If there are 4 of you in the household, all 4 of you make a phone call. Because to a parliamentarian, I had mentioned one thing that I learned in politics. Aga Rahimi, you will bear witness to this. When I was running for my own seat in Parliament, I had learned one thing, that every parliamentarian, any politician, anybody who wants to be elected, they know one thing. If one letter comes to them, one phone call comes to them, one email comes to them, that email, that letter, that phone call means 20 people feel the same but will not be able to call or write. So every one of you calling is like 20 votes for them. So if 10 of you make the call, and if there are 4 people in each of your families, 80 people make the call, you multiply that by 80, that's 1,600 people that they are worried about. Keep up the pressure. And the other thing, the last thing I want to say, inshallah, whenever you find out about a rally, whenever you find out that there is a julus or a procession that is taking place for the Palestinians, consider it a responsibility to attend. Please, I beg you, I urge you, whenever you find out locally, or if you can drive a little bit and you can find out that there is something, because that has been putting the pressure. All this time, these prime ministers, these presidents, these leaders, they're saying one thing: our country stands with Israel, our country is behind Israel, our country. And then they see that the parliamentarians are the only ones who are standing. The public is on the other side. This is where your voices and your numbers become very effective. May Allah bless you, inshallah. May Allah reward you. May Allah, inshallah, make it easy for you and comfortable for you. May Allah protect you and your families. May Allah, inshallah, keep the people of Gaza, Palestine, Kashmir, and all those who are suffering in Bahrain and Yemen, keep them safe in the same way. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help on this day of Jum'ah, inshallah. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.